Hey guys, and welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about Git, what Git is, and how to use it. Now, there's a ton of stuff you can do with Git, and this video is really geared towards beginners that have no experience with Git or repositories or anything like that. So I'm going to try to explain briefly what that is, and then get into all of the different commands and how you can use them and why it's useful. Now, Git is something that I guarantee you'll be expected to know and to use in probably workplace or a team environment. For me in school, it's really frustrating when a lot of teammates that I want to work with don't know how to use Git because it just makes things a lot more difficult, or I have to explain it to them. So it's something that you should really know, and I recommend if you don't know it, you watch this video and make sure you understand what I'm doing. Now, the first step to using Git is to download it. Now, you can download it for any OS. The commands are going to be the same. I'm going to be doing this on Windows, but I'll leave this link in the description. Obviously, click on your appropriate operating system and just go through the installation and don't change anything. Just keep all the default settings unless you know what you're doing and you know what you're changing. Just keep all the default settings and everything should work fine. There's nothing you need to modify in that. Okay, so once we've installed Git, the next step is to, well, we're going to have to talk about quickly what a repository is. So essentially what Git allows us to do is do version control on different versions of our code. So essentially, say we write, say we're working in a team of 5 people. We want to have one main code base that stores all of the code for our project. Say I'm in charge of doing like a login window. Someone's in charge of like the back end of a server, right? And we need all that code in one area. Well, chances are you're probably going to write the code on your local machine and then update that main code base. Now, that's what Git allows us to do, but it also allows you to just save, like pull things, add things. We'll go through all of it, but that's the main function of it is for like team-based coding. So you're going to work on what's known as a local repository, which is kind of all the code on your machine, and then you're going to commit specific files and updates and everything to the main code base where everyone is storing like their finalized versions of code and pulling information and grabbing information from there. That's what essentially Git does for us. Now, Git is also useful if you're working alone because that means that you can, change things. Like say I'm working on my laptop and I want to work on something on my laptop and then update it to the code base. And then from my PC, I want to download that same code base and then have that updated version on my computer. That's another way we can use Git. There's tons of different ways, but I'm just giving you some of the main ideas of it. So the first thing we need to do is create what's known as an empty repository, which is going to be the local repository on our machine. So this is only available to us, and this is what's going to store our own code, and then we can send that to the remote repository, which will be the main code base for the team or the online version, right, when we're ready to do so. So to do this, there's 2 ways that we can do all the commands I'm about to show you. The first way is to do it from command prompt, or like terminal or whatever you're using, and just type git and do it in here. That's fine, you can use this, but what I'm going to use is what's known as the git bash. So if I just type git in my thing here, I can click on git bash. It's going to bring up a more Linuxy kind of terminal window where I can do all of my git commands. Now, what I've done and what you should do as well is create a folder, empty folder. I mean, it doesn't have to be empty, but whatever project you're going to be working in. So in this case, I want to create a repository for git test, which is on my desktop. You can see this folder here. I need to change directories into that folder. So let's say you had a repository already you wanted to go into, maybe like I wanted to go into cat game or something. Then I would just change directory into that and do the exact same steps, but just in that directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do cd and then git hyphen, or I need to go to desktop first, sorry. So I'm going to go cd desktop and then cd git hyphen test, which is the name of the folder that I want to create a blank repository in. Now I've just pulled up the folder on the side here so you guys can see exactly what's happening when I do these commands. But what I'm going to do now is initialize a blank GitHub repository, or not GitHub, just Git repository. We will use GitHub later. I'm going to do git init. Now by typing this in the current directory that we're in, you should see, or actually you probably won't see a folder pop up, but it's going to initialize a repository that's going to allow you to add, commit, push, pull things from other repositories. So if you want to see this folder, what you have to do is you have to actually go to this view tab in your Windows Explorer and then just hit hidden items. I don't know how to do it on Mac or Linux, but I'm sure someone will probably leave a comment down below or something on how to do that. So anyways, that's how you can see that folder. Now we can open up this folder and look at it if we want, but it really doesn't matter to us. This is just what's going to allow us to run commands and save stuff. We don't really care what's in this folder, okay? So now we have the folder, and now what we need to do is, well, we need to start creating some files that we can commit and add to our local repository, because right now it's just an empty repository that doesn't have anything in it. We need to add stuff to it. So I'm just going to create a few files quickly. So I'm just going to create tim.py, and I'll create a readme.txt, okay? So I've created two files. You can see them here inside of my main directory. Now, these are not yet a part of the repository, because the repository, we need to run some commands to add them into the repository. So if we want to add these files into the repository, there's a few different ways that we can do this. The first way is to simply type git add and then type period or dot. And what this is going to do essentially is add all of the files in our directory to the repository. So if I do this and I type git add, actually, well, I'll do that in a second. But if we want to see the status of our repository, we can type git status, and you can see that it says no commits yet, and it says untracked files. These are what are in the current directory, but we have not added yet to the repository. Okay, so watch now. If I type git add dot, I'm going to add these files into the repository, and now if I do git status, you can see that it says new file readme.txt and new file tim.py. You can see they're in green. We've added them to the repository, but we have not yet committed them. And this is where I'm going to talk about the difference between having them added and committing. So there's two areas for our repository. There's one area called like the staging and the index area. And then there's another area that's like the actual repository that stores different versions of our code and all that. So the first place, which is the staging place, is where we add files in before we commit them. So it's kind of a temporary place where we're able to make all of the changes that we want and then commit that to the actual local repository. So right now, these files are in the staging area because I've only added them, I haven't committed them. So if I want to commit these files and actually make a permanent change in the repository, what I do is I do git commit -m, and then I type a message, which is essentially the change that I made. So in this case, I'm just going to say first changed, like that, okay? And by doing that, you can see that it now says 2 files changed, 0 insertions, 0 deletions, and then it tells you essentially what it did, okay? And that is all it is to add and commit things to the repository. Now, the reason we do this with the commits and we give them different names is because this repository is going to actually store all of the different versions of your code. And you're going to be able to look at it and see, when you change something, what you change. So say you mess up a file and you committed it to the repository. Now the repository is broken, it's not working. You can actually revert back to other versions of the code that you've put in that repo, essentially. And repo is just short for repository. Okay, so that's how we add things, how we make the commits. Now, let's just talk about like changing files and how you can commit just 1 file, 2 file, all that kind of stuff. So if I open up this readme file and I type hello in here and just save that, now I've made a change to this directory, but I haven't made a change to the repository. So look, if I type git status like this, you can see that it says there's a modified file readme.txt. And we haven't changed the repository yet. This file is just, it knows that it's modified, but we haven't changed anything. So change is not staged for commit, and that's what it means, right? It's not in the staging area yet. So if I want to add this specific file into the repository, I'll do the same thing. I'll do git add, but this time I'm just going to type the file name, so readme.txt, and then I can commit it to the actual repository, again, by doing git commit -m, and then just doing changed readme like that. I'll say 1 file changed, 1 insertion, and now in this actual repo here, that's where we have like the changed readme file. So essentially you can make modifications to your code, test things out before you make the final change to your repository, which is really nice. So I have actually like a little command cheat sheet I'll bring up here, and we'll make sure we go through most of them. Okay, so essentially, we've gone through init, add, status, commit. That's another way to commit. So now we'll go through how we can actually remove files from our repository. So to remove a file, well, let's first just type git status. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. Okay, if we want to remove something, what we can do is we can do git rm -- cached, and then type the name of the file we want to remove. In this case, I'll type tim.py. Okay, and now what this means is we've deleted tim.py. So if I do git status, you can see that it says deleted tim.py, untracked files, tim.py, which means essentially it's not committed into the repository. Yeah, so we've deleted this file, but now that we've deleted it, we actually have to commit that delete. Just like when we add something, we need to commit that, we need to commit the delete as well. So to do that, we can just type git commit and then just type like -m as our message, and we'll type delete tim.py. And there we go. It says we've deleted that file. And then if we type git status, you can see that it just says this is one file that we don't have in the repository right now. And that's how that works in terms of removing, adding things into the GitHub repository. So that's all I'm going to go through in terms of adding stuff, removing stuff. Now I'm going to talk about branches quickly, and then we're going to talk about working with a remote repository, which is probably the most important part of this. So now that we know the kind of the basic commands, how to add, remove things, let's talk about branches. Now remember I was saying that you're going to have a main code base and you're going to have different people working on that code base. Well, if you're working on a massive file, maybe hundreds of different people, you might not want each person to be modifying the main code base each time they make a commit to it. So what we actually do is we can work on something called branches, which are exactly just branches off of the main code base, which means that say two people are working on a login script, right? Then we can modify the branch that deals with the login script. And that branch holds all of the code that deals with the login script. And only once that branch is complete and finished, we'll merge it with the main code base and add it in there. And I'm going to show how to do all that right now. So if we want to create a branch, and we can do this on a local repository as well as like a remote one too, what we're going to do is we're going to type git branch and then the name of the branch. So in this case, I'm just going to call it, let's say, I don't know, we can use the login example. It's a pretty standard example. We'll do git branch login. Okay. And now we've created a branch called login, but notice that on the side here, we're still in what's known as the master branch. Now the master branch is the main branch that stores all, it's the main thing. It's the middle code base, all right? And all the other branches like go off of the master branch. So if we want to change onto the login branch as opposed to the master branch, what we need to do is we need to do git check out and then type the name of the branch we want to go to. In this case, I want to go to login. So now I've switched to the login branch. Let me close this. So now notice that on the login branch, if I type git status, you can see that we have an untracked file that is tim.py. So we can now actually commit, what is it? Let's make a change to readme. Let's call this hello tim like that. So remember on the other branch, it was just hello, right? So now I've made a change and I've called that hello tim. And you know what? Let's even edit this Python file and let's import OS, okay? Like that. All right, so now we've made two changes to here, but we've changed them on the login branch because we've just changed the branch that we're in to be login. So now if I commit these files or first add them to the login branch and then commit them to the login branch, they will be different than the master branch files. And you guys will see how that works in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to type git add dot to add all of it. And then I'm going to type git commit -m and then just type update. Okay. So now it says 2 files changed, 2 insertions, 1 deletion, and then it created this file tim.py because it wasn't already on the branch. So now if I want to, switch back to the other branch and see the difference in files, I'll do that right now. But first, let's just see readme right now. It says hello tim, right? So now let's change to the other branch. So let's do, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back to this terminal and let's go git check out, if I spell that correctly, master. Okay, so now we've switched to the master branch. And notice that on the master branch, that tim file doesn't exist. And that's because we deleted it from the master branch. Look over here on the right side. That file is no longer there. And if I open the README file, you see it only says hello. It doesn't say hello Tim. So this is a really interesting way that we can work on different projects in the same repository on different branches. So you can modify something on one branch and it's not going to affect the other branch. And that's exactly how and why this is so useful. So yeah, that's essentially how that works in terms of the branches. So same thing here now. If I want to change branches again, I'll do git check out, and then we'll just do login. And now we've switched to login, and notice that Tim pops back up, README pops back up, and when I go to README, it says hello Tim now. So that's how we change the branches. All right, so let's see what else we need to do now. Okay, so I think we are almost at the point to do remote repositories. First, I want to show you how we can merge things together. So for example, we're on the login branch right now. If we wanted to merge a branch to the master code base and essentially take all the code from the login branch and put it on master, what we need to do is we need to go back to the master branch and then simply type git merge and then just the name of the branch. In this case, we'll type login. So when we do that, you can see we're going to take all the code from login and throw it onto the main code base. And if there's anything on login that's different than the stuff on the main code base, it's going to overwrite that. So let's have a look now. And we're in the master branch. And now we see that this Tim file has popped back up in the master branch, right? So let's look at README. And you can see that README now says hello Tim as opposed to saying hello because it overrode it. And now if we open this Tim file, it says import OS, right? Because that's what it said on the other branch. Now we can still go to the other branch and make changes on that and then re-merge them later. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so that's essentially how the merging and all that works. Now it is time to go to remote repositories. So for right now, all we've been doing is modifying the repository on our main machine. We haven't been changing anything online, right? So now we need to figure out how we can actually update this to the cloud so other people can see it, make changes to a main repository. So to do that, we're going to use GitHub. Now GitHub is essentially a free hosting platform where you can, change repositories, look at versions. I'm sure a lot of you guys know GitHub and have used it, but it works obviously with Git. So what we need to do is we need to start by creating a new repository, which is going to be our remote repository on the cloud, right? So I've just signed into GitHub. It's free. Just create an account, github.com, and just go to new repository. I'm just going to call this test, okay? And description, I don't need to give it any. I'm going to make it public, and you can initialize this with a README file if you want, but you don't have to. So I'm just going to leave that for now. So I'm going to create repository right now. And now it's going to say, this is essentially how we can upload stuff to this repository. So all the code we've written is on our main machine, right? Now we could actually do we could use the GUI here and upload files, but we don't want to do that. We want to do this from the command line, nice and easy, right? So let's make this a bit smaller, and it's actually telling us exactly what we need to do to upload something to this repository. So first it's saying we have to create an empty repository, we have to add the files we want, we have to commit them, and then we have to push them to the branch that we want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create what's known as a remote repository on our local machine, which essentially is the configuration for how we upload something to the remote repository. So what we do is we just type git remote, and notice when I do this, nothing pops up. Now that's because I don't have any remote repositories right now. If I had any remote repositories, they'd be listed. So what we need to do is we need to create one. So to do that, I'm going to do git remote add, and then I'm going to type the name of the repository. I can name it whatever I want, and then put this link in right here, okay? So what I'm just gonna do is name this, I don't know, tutorial, okay? So git remote add tutorial, and then what I'm gonna do is take this link right here, it's also up there, copy it, and just paste it right here. Now if I do this and I hit enter, no errors, we've created a remote repository called tutorial. So now we have this repository on our local machine, and we have an empty repository, and I'll show you it right here, on our, like GitHub, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna push the code from our local repository to the online repository. Now you should only do this once you're certain that your code's working, and that, like, because you're going to override things that are on this repository, right? So we're going to push to what's known as the master branch, and we'll talk about that in a second. So we're literally just going to copy what it says here. We're going to say git push -u, and then the name, which in this case I named mine tutorial. I guess you could have named it origin to make it easier, and then just say master. And this master just stands for what branch we're pushing to. If we wanted to push to the login branch, we would just type login, okay? So I'm going to hit enter, and wait a second, and it's going to tell me to log in to GitHub. So I got to log in. Okay, so I was having a lot of issues logging in just because I forgot that I had two-factor authentication. I was just messing up. But essentially, once you do this, you type git push -u tutorial, or whatever the name of your repo is, or whatever the thing is, and then master. You should get this stuff popping up saying that it's pushing it to the branch master. Now notice that on my right side here, you can see that it did push these over. And it says readme.txt, tim.py, and I have the files on this repo now. So now I've essentially pushed them to this repository. Now again, if I want to make changes to my files, I'll first change them on my local machine. So I'll add them into my repository. And then when I'm done with them and I've committed them to my local repository, I will push that entire repository to the, the main code base, or the remote repository, which is on GitHub. Now, if you want to push branches, well, remember we just type master to do this. So I can type login and push that branch as well. And this, then you see branch login setup track remote branch from tutorial. So now we have another branch. And if I go to branch, you can see that it says login, and I can look at the login branch and notice that, well, it's going to be the same because we merged them, but I have this branch login, and I can go to the master branch as well up here. So that is essentially how that works. Very straightforward. I mean, this isn't that hard. You just kind of have to play with it to understand. I'll quickly bring this up so you guys can have a look at this stuff. Oh, there's something I forgot to do that might be important if you're working as a team. You may want to actually, I'm going to copy this, type this. So git config -global, and I think it's actually two hyphens, hyphen global, user.name, and then give yourself a name. So this way, when you actually make commits, it's going to say who committed it. So if I do Tim like that, I mean, I don't have to put in quotes, I can just do Tim. Now I've set up my global name. So whenever I make any commits to the repo, so the remote repository, it's going to show up my name. You may also want to change your email as well by doing user.email, and then you can do Tim at, and then whatever my email is, so at techwithtim.net. And this way now, when you make commits to the remote repository, it'll show your information so that if someone needs to contact you, they can do so. Okay, so I was just editing this video and I realized I forgot a pretty important part. So I'm just going to show you quickly how you can actually pull repositories from the main code base, or from like wherever you want. So essentially you can pull specific branches, or you can just pull the entire code base. So let's say I'm on GitHub and I find a project that I want. This could again be the project that you're working on, or it could just be someone else's project. So in this case, I'm just on one that I made, which is this online chess game. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to click on clone or download. So I found this on GitHub. I'm going to copy this link, and what I'm going to do to actually clone this is I'm going to start by making a directory where I want to clone it to. So I'm going to say make dir, and let's just call it chess, and I'll make that on my desktop. So now I can cd into that directory. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do git pull, and then just type the name of the, the thing here, whatever it's set on GitHub. So I'll do that. Not a git repository or any of the, so I just have to do git init first, my bad. And then I can clone this repository by pulling it, and you can see it's pulled it and it's got that. And now if I go to, chess, where is the chess folder? Right here. You can see that I have all of these files that are actually on this repo here that's online, and I've downloaded them to my local repository on my machine. So steps to pull, I would create a folder if I were you, and then make that a git repository by doing git init, and then just pull it by doing pull. And that's literally all you have to do to clone a repository like this. And if you want to clone, like say to another branch, you could click on the branch and then just click clone, and it would tell you the URL to do that as well. So anyways, that has been it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you again in another one.